Hi, I'm Ashwin. Thanks for tuning in to a new Crash Course video. Today, we'll be talking about the Gilded Age and Progressive Era, the progressive presidents of the United States of America, and women's rights and the struggles for justice. To start off with, I will be talking about the Gilded Age and Progressive Era. To begin with, the practice of rewarding political supporters of government jobs is called the spoils system. Then we have the Pendleton Act, which created the Civil Service Commission, which was to fill jobs on a merited basis. Continuing on, the Interstate Commerce Act forbade practices such as rebates. It was signed by President Grover Cleveland in 1887. Next, we have the Sherman Antitrust Act, which prohibited businesses from trying to limit or destroy competition. It was signed by President Harrison in 1890, and the act proved to be difficult. Then, trustbusters were people working to destroy monopolies or funds. Next, corruption was when politicians accepted money to reward sewer garbage jobs to friends. As a result, it became a way of life. There were many political reforms signed during this time period. The Wisconsin Idea was one of the political reforms signed during this time. It was announced by Robert La Follette, also known as Battling Bob. Another reform was graduated income tax, which was a method of taxation that taxed people at different rates depending on income. Next was the recall reform, which allowed people to vote to remove an elected official from office. Then there was the initiative reform, which was a process that allowed voters to put a bill before a state legislature. Finally, the referendum was a way for people to vote directly on a proposed new law. During this time period, there were two constitutional amendments passed. One was the 16th Amendment, which gave Congress the power to pass an income tax. It was ratified in 1913. There was also the 17th Amendment, which was ratified in 1913 and required the direct election of senators. There were a lot of crusading journalists, also known as muckrakers, during this time. Welcome back to part 2 of my Crash Course video. Furthermore, I'll be talking about the progressive presidents. One of the progressive presidents was Theodore Roosevelt, who was in office for 8 years from 1901 to 1909. He was a progressive leader and a trustbuster. He also made the Square Deal, which stated that everyone should have the same rights and opportunities. Teddy also created the Food and Drug Agreement and the Lumber and U.S. Forest Service Act. He set aside 1,000 acres of land for forests. Finally, President Roosevelt created the Bull Moose Party, which was his progressive party. Another progressive president was William Taft, who was in office for 4 years from 1908 to 1912. His presidential approach was far different from Roosevelt's. Taft was quiet and cautious, and he was wary of power. On the other hand, President Roosevelt was not wary of power, and he was an extrovert. The final progressive president I will be talking about is Woodrow Wilson. He created the New Freedom, which hoped to restore free competition among American corporations. He also founded the Federal Trade Commission, which had the power to investigate companies and order them to stop using unfair practices to destroy competitors. Wilson also founded the Clayton Antitrust Act, which banned some businesses' practices that limited competition and stopped antitrust laws from being used against unions. Finally, he founded the Federal Reserve Act, which set up a system of federal banks and gave the government power to raise or lower interest rates and controlled the money supply. Welcome back to the third part of our Crash Course video. Another topic I will be talking about is the rights of women. One woman, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, formed the National Women's Suffrage Association. Another woman, Susan B. Anthony, helped to form the NWSA. Carrie Chapman Catt devised a detailed strategy to win suffrage. Alice Paul talked to the president about passing an amendment to have women's rights. After this, the 19th Amendment was passed guaranteeing women's rights to vote. Today, everyone from ages 18 up can go to the polls to vote for the person that they want to represent their country or state. Because of the 19th Amendment, there were new opportunities for women. They had higher education. By 1900, the nation had 1,000 women lawyers and 7,000 women doctors. Another opportunity was women clubs. Most women in these clubs became reformers. One famous reformer was Florence Kelley. She investigated conditions in sweatshops. Then, women made the Women's Christian Temperance Union, WCTU for short. Frances Willard was the president of the WCTU, and she wanted to ban the sale of liquor and close saloons. Another woman in this organization, Carrie Nation, stormed into saloons smashing beer kegs and liquor bottles. She won, but her actions embarrassed the WCTU. After this, Congress passed the 18th Amendment, which enforced prohibition, a ban on the sale and consumption of alcohol. This amendment is no more today because people over 21 can buy as much alcohol as they want. Welcome back to Crash Course Part 4. This is our final part. In this topic, I will be talking about the struggles for justice. One man, Booker T. Washington, which emerged as the most prominent African American, advised African Americans to learn trades and seek to move up gradually in society. Another man, W.E.B. Du Bois, who was the first African American to receive a PhD from Harvard University, urged blacks to fight discrimination rather than to patiently submit to it. He also founded the NAACP, which worked for equal rights for African Americans. One woman, Ida B. Wells, who was an African American journalist, urged African Americans to protest lynchings in their newspapers. Next, President Wilson's view on segregation was that he thought segregation was a benefit. Then, George Washington Carver founded hundreds of uses for peanuts and other crops. Next, Sarah Walker created a line of hair care products for African American women. After this, Mexican immigrants started coming to America. These immigrants came because revolution and famine swept Mexico. They settled in the southwest of America and often worked as field hands. They encountered no-skilled jobs, little pay, drug irrigation, and ditches. Barrios were a term for Mexican harbor hoods, and mutualists were a term for immigrating aid societies. Then, Asian immigrants started coming to America. Congress passed the Gentlemen's Agreement Act, which allowed Japanese husbands to join their wives in America. There was an anti-Catholic American Protective Association, which meant to restrict immigrants. Parochial schools were schools sponsored by his church. Anti-Semitism was prejudice against Jews. In 1913, a man named Leo Frank was accused of murder against a girl and was sentenced to death. Then there was the Anti-Defamation Act, which helped the prejudice. What is that? Oh, what the heck? What is this? Let's open this. It's mystery document time. This prohibited the sale, manufacture, transport, import, or export of alcoholic beverages. This was passed on January 16, 1919, and taken back on December 5, 1933. This is easy. The 18th Amendment. Thanks for tuning into this Crash Course project by Ashwin and Tommy Baylouny. Hope to see you next week.